The luxury car, with its powerful headlights cutting through the thick snowfall, sped down an icy road. The heavily pregnant German Shepherd, Samantha, was in the back seat, her golden brown eyes filled with confusion due to the sudden stop in the middle of nowhere. The driver, seemingly emotionless, stepped out of the car and yanked the door open, pulling Samantha into the freezing snow. Her heavy belly made it difficult for her to regain her balance as a sharp gust of wind hit her face, and she looked up at the man, William Holloway, who raised her since she was a puppy. The car then sped away, leaving Samantha alone in the storm. The pregnant German Shepherd wouldn't last long in the freezing temperatures, but miles away, a man was about to change everything. The black luxury sedan moved steadily through the storm, its interior warm and comfortable, shielding its driver from the brutal cold outside. In the back seat, Samantha lay curled up, her body trembling due to the cold and unease in her chest. She sensed something was wrong. William, the man who had raised Samantha since she was a puppy, sat in the driver's seat, his grip tightening around the wheel, his face emotionless, and his eyes fixed straight ahead. He didn't hesitate to step outside, and the cold air rushed in. Before Samantha could react, the back door swung open, and a rough hand grabbed her by the collar, yanking her out of the car and into the freezing snow. Samantha's eyes were filled with confusion as she let out a soft whimper and her ears flicked back. She was uncertain about the reason behind the car stopping and what was happening. William didn't say a word. He simply unfastened Samantha's collar and let it drop into the snow. He looked down at her for a long moment, his expression unreadable, before turning his back and getting back into the car. The car door slammed shut and the engine roared to life as Samantha took a shaky step forward. She let out a desperate, pleading sound, but the tires spun against the ice and kicked up slush, causing the car to speed away. Samantha tried to run after William, but her heart was pounding in her chest. Her swollen belly made it difficult for her to move quickly, and her legs struggled against the deep snow. Her body was already exhausted, and within seconds, the red tail of the car disappeared into the storm. Samantha stopped, her breath coming in heavy clouds of mist. The world around her was silent, except for the wind, and the snow quickly buried any sign that she had ever been there. She shivered violently, her body unable to generate enough warmth. Her paws ached, and her vision blurred as exhaustion set in. Samantha lowered herself onto the frozen ground, her instincts telling her to conserve energy. Her puppies kicked weakly inside her, as if sensing the danger she was in. Her breathing slowed and her body trembled, indicating that she wouldn't survive for much longer if she stayed there. Just when it seemed like all hope was lost, Samantha heard something in the distance, the low rumble of an engine. It was faint at first, barely audible over the wind, but it grew louder, and headlights cut through the swirling snow. A truck skidded to a stop a few feet away, and the driver's door swung open. Heavy boots crunched through the snow as someone approached Samantha, and she hoped that this person would be able to help her. Ethan Carter was confronted with a desperate situation as he came across a pregnant German Shepherd left to fend for herself in freezing cold conditions. A man's voice called out in the distance, telling her to stay with him, and in a state of exhaustion, Ethan managed to lift her off the icy ground. The German Shepherd was too weak to struggle and too cold to comprehend her surroundings before losing consciousness. Ethan held the German Shepherd tightly in his arms as he rushed her to his truck. He observed that her fur was damp with melting snow, her breathing was shallow, and her body was frighteningly cold. Her unnatural lightness due to her pregnancy heightened Ethan's sense of urgency. He was determined to save her life. With urgency, Ethan yanked open the passenger door of his truck and carefully laid the German Shepherd across the seat. He tried to comfort her by murmuring words of encouragement, and he turned the heater to maximum blast to warm her up. Although the warm air rushed over her, the German Shepherd barely moved, and her golden brown eyes flickered open for a moment, before shutting again. Ethan's heart pounded with concern as he navigated the icy roads through the worsening snowstorm. His visibility was reduced to almost nothing, and he gripped the wheel tightly as he wondered who would abandon a heavily pregnant dog in such a harsh environment. Ethan's anger grew as he thought about the cruelty of whoever had left the German Shepherd to die. He had seen cases of neglect before, but this was different. This case was an act of cruelty, and it infuriated Ethan. He pressed harder on the gas to navigate the treacherous roads as fast as possible, but every second felt like an eternity to him. His veterinary clinic was not far, but in the storm, it felt like an insurmountable distance. When Ethan finally arrived at the clinic, he barely took the time to shut off the engine before rushing to the passenger side of the truck. As he opened the door, a mixture of relief and worry washed over him as he reached for the dog that remained still. He tried to reassure the dog, speaking softly under his breath, but it seemed to be in a state of shock. The dog's chest rose and fell with a faint whimper, which only increased his concern. Feeling a rush of fear, he carefully picked up the dog and entered the clinic, which offered a sense of comfort and warmth upon stepping inside. However, the clinic was dimly lit, except for a faint light near the reception desk. The storm outside might have caused him to close early, but his priority now was the dog's well-being. He pushed aside his earlier decision and made his way to the exam room. Upon entering the exam room, he gently placed the dog onto the padded table, before grabbing a thick blanket to wrap around her shivering body. The dog's condition seemed critical. Ethan quickly assessed her vitals, noting her faint pulse and low body temperature. The dog was in the early stages of hypothermia, and he knew every second counted. Gathering his composure, Ethan worked swiftly to set up heating pads around the dog's frozen paws and administered warm fluids to stabilize her body temperature. The situation blurred into a series of swift and efficient actions as he fought to keep the dog alive. The tension was palpable as he worked tirelessly to counteract the effects of the extreme cold. His focus solely on the dog's recovery, Ethan pushed aside his own exhaustion and anxiety, driven by a deep-seated desire to save the life of the helpless creature in his care. The minutes ticked by in slow motion as he concentrated on each step, carefully monitoring the dog's vital signs and adjusting his treatment accordingly. She had been lying there for a long time, struggling to breathe, but her condition had improved slightly. Ethan, who had been taking care of her, let out a sigh of relief as he gently adjusted the blanket around her. She stirred, her ears twitching, and for a brief moment, a spark of hope flickered in Ethan's chest. He whispered encouragement, and her eyes finally opened, though they were filled with exhaustion and weariness. Ethan felt a deep connection with her, realizing that she was more than just a dog. She had come close to death, but had managed to fight back, and Ethan couldn't help but feel a sense of admiration for her strength. A faint voice called out, and Ethan turned to see his 7-year-old niece, Lily, standing in the doorway. She was rubbing her eyes, still half asleep, but her gaze immediately went to the dog on the table, and her expression turned worried. "This is where I'll begin my response." Lily's eyes widened in alarm as she took in the sight of the dog, who was clearly injured and had been left outside in the snow. Lily's small hands gripped the table as she studied the sick dog. Her expression was a mixture of sadness and concern, which deepened her niece's worry for the dog's condition. Ethan reassured her that the dog was sick but likely to be okay. However, Lily was skeptical and hesitant to react. As Ethan hesitated in response, Lily reached out and gently brushed her fingers against the dog's fur. Her actions conveyed her affection and concern for the dog's well-being. She whispered softly that the dog was pretty, and Ethan could sense the empathy in her voice. Ethan glanced at the dog and then back at his niece, before responding that he didn't know the dog's name. At this point, Lily's curiosity was piqued and she asked if she could name the dog. Her request was met with a soft chuckle from Ethan, who suggested that they should wait and see if the dog made it through the night before considering a new name. Lily nodded in agreement, but her eyes remained fixed on the dog, a clear indication of her affection for the animal. The atmosphere in the room grew quiet as they stood there, watching the German Shepherd's slow breathing. Time passed, and Lily finally broke the silence by suggesting that the dog looked like a Sam. Her statement was met with an eyebrow raise from Ethan, who was intrigued by her observation. When Lily nodded in affirmation, Ethan began to appreciate the dog's appearance and her new name, Sam. Ethan felt a sense of affection settle in his chest as he sat beside the exam table, running his fingers through Sam's fur as she slept. The clinic remained quiet, with the steady hum of the heater being the only sound that filled the space. In this moment, Ethan's fingers seemed to be a gentle reassurance to the sleeping dog Sam. He leaned back in his chair, his eyes fixed on Sam, who was still recovering from the storm. The warmth in the room provided some comfort, but he knew hypothermia wasn't the only thing she had to contend with. She was also carrying a litter of puppies, and her body had been pushed to its limits. The hours since he brought her in had ticked by slowly, and though she was no longer shivering with cold, her weakness still lingered. Lily sat cross-legged on the floor beside the table, her eyes fixed on Sam, who was now breathing a little better. She spoke softly, her voice a gentle reassurance, and Ethan nodded in agreement, although his expression betrayed a deeper concern. He had seen cases like this before, where even with the best care, dogs didn't pull through. The thought made his stomach twist with anxiety. Just as Ethan's thoughts were consumed by this fear, a knock at the door interrupted him. Ethan frowned, gazing at the clock as it ticked closer to midnight. He wondered who would be brave enough to venture out into the storm in the middle of the night. "Stay here with her," he told Lily as he stood up and made his way to the front of the clinic. His footsteps echoed through the empty room. As he opened the creaky door, a harsh gust of wind blew inside, sending a shiver down his spine. Standing on the porch, bundled up in a thick coat, was Deputy Mark Collins. Mark's patrol car was idling in the driveway, its headlights illuminating the snow-covered ground. Ethan's eyes focused on Mark as he stepped back to let him in. Mark shook the snow from his hat and stepped inside, his eyes adjusting to the dim light. "I didn't expect to see your lights on this late," Mark said, his voice firm but friendly. Ethan raised an eyebrow, his mind racing with possibilities. Crossing my arms, "I have a feeling this isn't a social visit," Ethan said, his voice steady. Mark's expression turned somber, and he shoved his hands into his pockets. "I heard you picked up a dog tonight, a pregnant German Shepherd," Mark said, his voice low and even. Ethan's jaw clenched, his eyes narrowing. "A truck driver reported seeing a black sedan dump a dog on the side of the road before taking off," Mark continued. "When I went to check it out, all I found were paw prints and tire tracks leading into the woods." Ethan's eyes flashed with anger, and he tightened his jaw. Mark nodded, his expression sympathetic. "She would have frozen to death out there," Mark said, his voice softening. Ethan felt a pang of guilt, knowing that Mark was right. Mark's eyes locked onto Ethan's, his expression serious. "That's why I need to know, are you keeping her?" Mark asked, his voice firm, but not unkind. Mark's eyes wandered, and he hesitated before answering. He was worried that if her owner came looking for her, the situation would become complicated. If the owner had proof that she belonged to them legally, they would be able to take her back. Mark's hesitation fueled Ethan's anger, as he couldn't bear the thought of the person who abandoned her taking her away. Ethan's anger flared in his chest at the idea that the same person who had left her to die in a snowstorm could just show up and take her back. He was frustrated that the laws didn't protect her in such situations. Mark rubbed the back of his neck, seeming to acknowledge the severity of the situation. He didn't like it any more than Ethan did, but he was simply stating the facts. Ethan clenched his jaw, his mind racing with the possibility of losing the dog. He couldn't let that happen, and he wouldn't. The dog didn't have any identification, such as a CER, certification of registration, microchip or tags, which meant she was essentially a stray. Mark sighed, as if sharing in Ethan's concern. He wasn't saying that someone would come knocking on Ethan's door tomorrow, but if they did, he should be prepared to fight for her. Ethan didn't hesitate in his response. He was willing to fight for the dog's right to remain with him. Mark studied him for a moment before nodding, seemingly satisfied that Ethan was prepared for the potential outcome. Ethan glanced toward the back of the clinic, concerned for the dog's well-being. He replied that she was stable for now but had been through a lot and was expecting a litter of puppies. Mark's expression softened at the news, and he expressed hope that the dog would have enough energy to care for her puppies. Mark was smiling when he saw Lily standing in the doorway. The little girl appeared to be confident in her decision to protect Sam. Her arms were crossed over her chest, and a firm expression was on her face. Mark tipped his hat before leaving, but Ethan stayed behind to watch Lily. Lily showed determination as she stood by Sam's side, refusing to let anyone take her away. Ethan's expression was calm as he knelt down to her level. He reassured her that Sam was safe and that he would not let anyone harm her. The next morning, Ethan's clinic was quiet, but the tension inside was palpable. Sam was awake and her golden brown eyes were fixed on Ethan. He was carefully checking her vitals, and Lily sat beside her, stroking her fur gently. Ethan acknowledged that Sam was looking better, but still emphasized that she was not out of danger yet. Sam seemed to sense the conversation about her, and Ethan's expression turned serious. He was still worried about her condition, especially since she was close to giving birth. Sam took a deep breath and gently pressed his head against Lily's small hand, feeling a sense of comfort and reassurance from her presence. This brought a faint smile to Ethan's face, which was a good sign that he was starting to trust them again. However, this moment of peace was short-lived, as a sharp knock at the clinic door suddenly interrupted the calm atmosphere. Ethan instantly sensed unease and exchanged a concerned glance with Lily before getting up to answer the door. He told her to stay where she was, his tone firm but laced with a hint of worry. As Ethan approached the front door, his anxiety grew. He was not expecting any visitors, especially after the warning he had received from Mark the previous night. The latter's ominous words had left him with a bad feeling about this unexpected visit. Ethan's apprehension became even more pronounced when he opened the door to find William Holloway standing outside. William, dressed in a long black coat, was a well-known businessman with a reputation for being ruthless and cunning. His sharp blue eyes scanned Ethan's face with barely concealed impatience, and his expression seemed to suggest that he was already annoyed. Dr. Carter stepped forward to greet Ethan, his voice smooth but cold. He claimed that Ethan had something that belonged to him, a German Shepherd dog that had run off the previous day and was pregnant. Ethan's jaw clenched in response, and he refused to hand over the dog, which seemed to annoy William further. Ethan's blood boiled after being told a vet brought in a dog that belonged to William, claiming it had run off. However, Ethan knew the truth. The dog was left in a snowstorm and abandoned to die. When William showed a lack of reaction, Ethan shot back, stating that the dog was hypothermic when he found her, and it's a miracle she survived. William seemed unconcerned and uninterested in debating the situation. Ethan was furious and told William that he didn't deserve the dog, emphasizing that she was a living being and not just a piece of property. William, however, remained indifferent and unyielding, stating that he owned the dog and wanted her back. Ethan was outraged and refused to let William take the dog, insisting that he had papers proving the dog's ownership. William smirked, implying that he had removed the dog's identification, leaving it to Ethan to prove ownership. Ethan calmly maintained that if William truly cared about the dog, he wouldn't have left her to die in a snowstorm. When William revealed that he had his reasons for abandoning the dog, Ethan countered that, given his care for the dog, William's reasons were no longer relevant. William, you're aware that leaving a living being in a snowstorm is animal cruelty. The fact that you're trying to take her back now is unacceptable. Instead of threatening Ethan, you should take responsibility for your actions and face the consequences. As for the dog's ownership papers, there's no need to involve the sheriff unless you're willing to admit that you abandoned the dog and face the consequences. The fact that you removed the dog's identification is suspicious, and it raises more questions about your intentions. William Holloway had a confrontation with Ethan, refusing to leave and eventually getting into his car and driving away. This was not the end of the encounter, as Ethan knew William would return. Ethan returned to the exam room where he found Lily, an animal who he seemed to know was once owned by William. Lily was concerned about her old owner taking her back, but Ethan reassured her that this would not happen. He knelt down in front of her and placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. However, Ethan was aware that this was only the beginning of a potentially difficult situation. William Holloway was a powerful and entitled individual who would not give up easily. Ethan anticipated a future confrontation with William, who would likely return with others. Despite this, Ethan had more pressing concerns in the present moment. One of the animals in his care, Sam, was in trouble. She had been resting but was now experiencing difficulty breathing and seemed to be in labor. Ethan's priority was to ensure Sam's safety and well-being. As the situation became more urgent, Ethan called out to Lily, asking for her assistance. Lily quickly responded, jumping up from her chair beside Sam. Ethan is trying to calm down Sam, who is giving birth to puppies and struggling due to her weakened state from a near-death experience. He needs Lily's help as the birth is complicated and stressful for Sam. Ethan has experience with delivering litters, but this situation is different because Sam is weak. He's trying to reassure everyone that Sam and the puppies are safe, but the birth process is taking a toll on Sam, both physically and emotionally. Lily is trying to help by bringing towels to support Ethan during the birth process. Ethan is asking for her assistance, and she is willing to help. As time passes, Sam is working through the labor with determination, but Ethan can see how much it's affecting her. The first puppy is finally born, and Ethan is drying it off and taking care of it. Sam immediately takes an interest in the puppy, nuzzling it closer to her. Despite feeling extremely tired, Lily's motherly instincts took over, and she breathed a sigh of relief as one of the puppies was born. However, their work was far from over, and Sam was hit with another contraction. The puppies were delivered one by one, with each one being smaller than Ethan had hoped for, but they were all alive. Unfortunately, something went wrong during the birth process, and the last puppy got stuck in Sam's birth canal. Ethan's heart was pounding as he tried to encourage Sam to keep going, speaking to her in a calm and reassuring tone. He felt along her belly to locate the stuck puppy, and knew that he had to act quickly to ensure the safe delivery of the last puppy. Ethan asked Lily to stay where she was and handed over his medical equipment so that he could do his job. Lily nodded, clasping her hands together as she anxiously watched Ethan work to deliver the final puppy. Ethan worked carefully and precisely to guide the last puppy out, using his medical expertise to help it be born as gently as possible. As the final puppy was delivered, Sam let out a weak cry, but it wasn't moving properly. Ethan's chest tightened with worry as he grabbed a towel and began rubbing the tiny puppy to try and revive it. He spoke softly to the puppy, trying to get it to move and breathe, but it refused to respond. Ethan applied more pressure, rubbing the puppy's nose and chest to try and stimulate it. Lily spoke up, her voice barely above a whisper, asking if the puppy was dead. Ethan replied firmly, not wanting to give up on the puppy, but his manner made it clear that he was worried about its chances of survival. Ethan stood tense, his fists clenched at his sides as William Holloway, flanked by two men in suits, stood at the clinic's entrance. The cold wind howled behind him, snow swirling around his polished shoes. William Holloway smirked, his unreadable gaze locked on Ethan. Ethan's voice remained steady as he spoke. "I assume you're aware Sam is not your property anymore." William Holloway sighed, stepping closer to the clinic. "Cut the theatrics, Dr. Carter. I have legal documents proving ownership, and that dog is my dog. It was bred from an expensive bloodline, and I won't let you keep it." Ethan's eyes narrowed, his expression darkening. "I think you're aware that Sam is a mother now, not just a pet. She has puppies, and they're her family." The two men standing beside William Holloway remained still, their unreadable gazes locked on Ethan. William Holloway's smile grew wider, his confidence evident. "I'm not here to discuss that. I'm here to take what's rightfully mine." As the standoff continued, Lily knelt beside Sam, gently brushing her fingers over one of the puppies. The young mother's fragile cry had been a long time coming, and Ethan's relief had been palpable. But now, with William Holloway's sudden arrival, Ethan's expression turned cold and determined. Ethan's anger surged as he thought about William's abandoning his pregnant companion, left in the middle of a harsh blizzard. William's cold expression remained unwavering as he claimed he had his reasons, but Ethan was unconcerned about them. Williams pulled out a folder containing documents proving his ownership of Sam, and his calm demeanor was a stark contrast to Ethan's intense anger. Williams stood firm, stating that if Ethan refused to hand Sam over, he would have the sheriff at Ethan's doorstep within the hour. Ethan knew that if Williams had the necessary documentation, the law was on his side, and he couldn't do much unless he chose to fight. As the situation escalated, Ethan calmly acknowledged Williams' claim of ownership, even suggesting that they take the matter to court. His voice was laced with a thinly veiled threat, making it clear that he was willing to take the fight to the authorities. Williams raised an eyebrow at Ethan's words, seemingly intrigued by his opponent's boldness. Ethan took a step forward, his expression unyielding as he revealed that he had already spoken with a sheriff's deputy the previous night. He had shared the truth about Sam being abandoned in the blizzard, and it seemed that Ethan was taking steps to ensure that Williams would not get away with his actions. Ethan's jaw tightened as he thought about the mother dog he had found in the storm, suffering from hypothermia. He had to act fast to save her life. If he hadn't brought her in when he did, she could have died. Now the mother dog was not just a stray anymore, but a mother to her puppies. Ethan was proud of the care he had given her and the puppies, and he was confident that he had done everything right. He had documented their birth and care, and he was ready to prove it if needed. When William threatened to call the sheriff, Ethan stood firm. He was not afraid of an investigation, and he knew that the truth would come out in the end. William's confidence began to waver as he realized that Ethan was not intimidated by him. William's bodyguards watched the scene unfold, and then William turned and walked away without another word. He got into his sleek black vehicle and drove off into the storm. Ethan let out a slow breath and felt the tension inside him ease. It was finally over. When Ethan returned to the exam room, he saw the mother dog and her puppies curled up together. The puppies were tiny but alive, and the mother dog was watching Ethan with quiet trust. Ethan was happy to see that they were safe and healthy. Lily was sitting beside Sam, and when Ethan told her that William was gone, she smiled. Ethan nodded in agreement and told her that William wouldn't be coming back. Lily let out a happy squeal and gently stroked one of the puppies. Ethan was happy to see Lily and Sam so happy. He thought that naming the puppies was a great idea, and he asked Lily to suggest a name for one of them. Lily grinned and started thinking of names. Sam, a dog who had been left to die in the snow, has been given a second chance at a happy life with a loving family. She had gone through immense suffering, but thanks to the love and care of her new family, she now has a future filled with hope and a family that will never abandon her. The remarkable story of Sam and her journey is a testament to the power of love, resilience, and second chances. It just goes to show that even in the darkest of times, there's always a chance for a better tomorrow, and that love and care can change everything. The incredible loyalty and strength of dogs like Sam are truly inspiring and remind us of the importance of kindness and compassion towards all living beings. Her story is a heartwarming reminder that second chances can be life-changing and that love and care can conquer even the toughest of circumstances. Sam's story also highlights the importance of animal welfare and the need for kindness and compassion towards animals that have been abandoned or left to suffer. It's a call to action, reminding us that we all have the power to make a difference in the lives of animals like Sam, and to spread awareness about the importance of animal welfare. By sharing stories like Sam's, we can inspire others to be more compassionate and kind towards animals, and to make a positive impact in their lives. It's a reminder that every animal deserves a second chance at a happy life, and that love and care can change everything. The lesson from Sam's story is that love and resilience can overcome even the toughest of circumstances, and that second chances can lead to a brighter future. It's a story that will touch your heart and inspire you to be kinder and more compassionate towards all living beings.